Okay, in this video I'd like to look at negative angles. So far we've looked at the four quadrants, the cast diagram, and finding angles, sine, cos and tan of angles from 0 around to 360 or 0 to 2 pi, but now we're looking at negative angles. So what is a negative angle? Well, for the positive angles we'll be moving in a clockwise direction. Okay, so we're moving around from 0 round to pi on 2 up there, round to pi and 3 pi on 2, etc. So we're moving in a anti-clockwise direction. When we look at negative angles, we're heading around the other way, okay, in the clockwise direction. And I've defined here the angle theta, around there, and you can see its partner angle there, going the other direction, is negative theta. So if theta was 30, this angle here, around here, would be negative 30. So for negative angles, you move in a clockwise direction. Now you'll notice that with our sine, cos and tan, we defined the distance from P to R as sine theta. So if I create another line here, down to there, okay, it's not totally obvious from this diagram, but they're actually the same length, okay, but whereas sine theta has a positive value, our value of sine of negative theta, which is here, sine of negative theta, okay, from there, from that point there, down to there, okay, it's a negative value. So we can say that the sine of negative theta equals the same as sine theta. Negative sine theta. So in other words, the sine of negative theta, that distance from R down to there, call it Q, is the same as sine theta, but it's a negative value, okay, because we're going from R down to Q in the negative direction. It's same as sine theta, that value, but it's negative sine theta. So that's our first rule. Now you might notice our value for cosine, which I haven't marked in, which is here, which is just here, cosine theta there. Okay, so that's from the origin there across to R. That's the same for the triangle involving theta as it is for the triangle involving negative theta. So in fact, cosine theta for both theta and negative theta is the same. So our rule for cosine of negative theta equals cosine theta. Okay, so it's the same value from O through to R across there. What about tan theta? Well, you can see I've got tan theta there for the angle that we've been familiar with, that distance TS. For negative theta, it's the same distance once again, okay, but it's negative. So in other words, for tan, okay, our third rule here is that tan of negative theta equals negative tan theta. Okay, just going over that again. When we're looking at negative angles, we're moving in a clockwise direction, the opposite direction. Sine theta will be the same value, but it will be negative. Cosine theta is common to both theta and neg theta, and tan theta will be negative. Let's summarise those rules. Let's find a new slide here. Write them out a bit more neatly. Sine negative theta equals negative sine theta. Cosine negative theta equals cosine theta, and tan negative theta equals negative tan theta. So practically, if we took let's say pi on 6 is our example, the sine of negative pi on 6 will be the same as the negative of sine pi on 6. Sine pi on 6 is 30 degrees, which is a half, so it'll be negative 1/2. That's how it works in practice. Okay, let's have a look at some problems associated with this. And these are the problems we were doing the other day. And there's just one extra step, and I'll just copy over these rules because we'll need them along the way. So let's start by looking here, and I'll just paste these rules down here. Okay, just so we've got them handy when we need them. Alrighty, let's start with sine negative 135. So applying this first rule here, just paste it in, this one here. Okay, and it says that sine negative theta is the same as negative sine theta. So we can convert this straight away to negative sine 135. Sine of negative theta, theta being 135, is the same as negative sine theta. Alright, then we apply the rules that we looked at the other day. Okay, equals negative sine, and we're looking at 135. It's in the second quadrant, so it's going to be 90. Beg your pardon, it's in the second quadrant. We'll start that a bit again. So it's going to be sine 180 minus 35. Okay, and I tend to, with these, just put a square bracket around these, just to make it clear that we're working out what's in brackets, and we'll just make it sure we include the negative at the end. Now, that's second quadrant, and sine is positive. That should be 45, sorry. So that's going to be the same as sine 45, okay, equals, and we know that sine 45, if we're committed to memory or we look up our table, is root 2 on 2, so it's going to be negative root 2 on 2. Next one is cos negative 240. So this time, because it's cos of a negative angle, we're using this rule here. Okay, the second one, that one there. So it says that cos of a negative angle is the same as the cosine of the angle, and dealing with cosine and negative angles is quite straightforward, because it just becomes cosine 240 degrees. There's no worries there about any negatives. So it's as if the problem is the same as that, as the ones we've been doing, cos 240. So that equals, we know that that is in the third quadrant, so it's going to be 180 plus 60. Okay, that's going to be the same as cosine 60, and we know that cosine in third quadrant, because of our cast diagram, let's draw that up quickly, C-A-S-T, we know in third quadrant here that tan is negative, so it's negative, cosine's negative, so it's negative cosine 60, and that's going to be negative 1/2 if we work it out. So it's one extra step. Okay, for the first one we had to remember that sine theta equal negative sine theta. Here, sine negative theta equal negative sine theta, and here cosine of negative theta equals cosine theta, according to our rule. Alright, onward to the next question. It's tan 330, and if we just paste in our rules here, so we've got them handy. Okay, tan negative 330. 330, we'll deal with in a moment, but we use the rule first up that says tan of negative theta equals negative tan theta, so that's going to equal negative tan 330 degrees. Okay, and to keep the negative out the front, and just use square brackets and do it as normal. This is fourth quadrant, so it's going to be 360 minus 30 equals negative. That's effectively the same as, negative, it's effectively the same as tan 30, and we're in fourth quadrant here. Okay, so it's going to be still positive. Tan is positive. Remember that 330 is in the fourth quadrant. So tan 30 If we've committed that to memory once again, or we look up our table and our formula sheet, it's on page 300 of our textbook. Tan of 30 degrees is root 3 on 3. So it's negative root 3 on 3. And there's our solution. Now look at some with radians involved. Okay, so we'll paste in our rules, so they're handy here for just a moment. Okay, there they are. So we've got the first one is sine negative 4 pi on 3. Alright, first rule we're dealing with here, this one here. So we convert it straight away. 2 equals negative sine 4 pi on 3. Okay, sine 4 pi on 3. That's going to be in the third quadrant. Okay, we'll just have a look at that, and we might just go for a moment and do sine 4 pi on 3. Give myself a bit more room. So let's look at sine 4 pi on 3. And if we look at our cast diagram, we've got 0, we've got pi on 2, we've got pi, and we've got 3 pi on 2. Okay, so 4 pi on 3. That's going to fall here in the third quadrant. Remember that pi is 3 pi on 3. So we've got 4 pi on 3. So it's pi plus another pi on 3. So let's look at that. So it's sine pi plus another pi on 3. Alright, this is in third quadrant. Sine's negative here. So it's going to be the same as negative sine pi on 3 equals sine pi on 3 sine 60 negative root 3 on 2. Okay, so sine 4 pi on 3 is negative root 3 on 2. Remember there, we're using the rules that we did the other day that says that sine pi plus an angle is the same as negative sine angle. It's in the third quadrant. So let's look at that result. Negative root 3 on 2. Go back to our question. Now, here's we've got a double negative situation, because we just worked out that that is negative root 3 on 2. So we've got negative root 3 on 2. Two negatives make a positive. Answer, root 3 on 2. That's the answer for sine neg 4 pi on 3. Okay, next one. Let's draw a line. Oops. Let's draw a line down here so we can see. Tan negative 5 pi on 6. Using the third rule here, tan negative theta equals negative tan theta. So that's going to equal negative tan 5 pi on 6. Okay, let's go away and work out what tan 5 pi on 6 is. Okay, so tan 5 pi on 6 is what we're after. Alright. Cast diagram. Okay, we've got 0, pi on 2, pi, 3 pi on 2. Now remember, pi is 6 pi on 6. So 5 pi on 6 is in that second quadrant there. 5 pi on 6. The difference between those two is pi on 6, so it's the same as tan of pi minus pi on 6. We know from our rules the other day, we can look them up again if we need to. So tan of pi minus an angle is the same as negative tan of that angle. That's because tan is negative in the second quadrant. So that's going to be negative tan pi on 6. Okay, so we need to now include the value for tan pi on 6 or tan 30 degrees. Once again, we either know it or we look it up. And tan pi on 6 is root 3 on 3. So it's going to be negative root 3 on 3. Alright, back to our problem. Okay, so it equals negative of negative root 3 on 3. Answer, root 3 on 3. So they're really like the questions we did the other day with an extra step, and just watching out for those situations where we've got a negative, which makes a positive. Okay, so let's look at the problems that we need to do with negative angles. If you look at our problems in the textbook, they occur question 8. So I'd like you please to have a go at exercise 6b, question 8. Okay, and remembering to use those rules there, those brackets, as your first step when doing those questions. That's all now for negative angles. I hope you go well with those.